how'd you find me?
YouTube. Oh, no. Well, recently YouTube. A couple of years ago, through HCG Chica, she had mentioned you, so I watched some of your videos.
Yeah. So yeah, and you did mention in
YouTube. Yeah.
You did mention in the consult request form that you've done the protocol multiple times. So that must have been, so it's really through the kind of the HCG.
The HCG world.
Yeah.
The weight loss apocalypse came up.
Yep. Did you get to read the book?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
At the time, I was kind of overwhelmed with it, and you did say something, though, that it made sense, but I wasn't in a place mentally to really take it in.
Mm-hmm.
About how you're just going to use HCG as a crutch, knowing that you can always come back to it.
Yes, and
later.
And you can see that now. Like, oh, well, yeah, of course.
Oh,
and you'll use
absolutely.
it like an enabler. Like, I can just, like, I don't need any boundaries with food because the weight I'm going to gain
I've always got that.
is going to get rid of it. So in the moment, I don't have to feel restricted, right? It's like a way to get rid of any sense of being deprived, right?
Right.
So if I have something I can fall back on, that means I don't even need to pay attention. I can have any excuse I want. I can use food for any reason, right? Because I do have a way that it will get fixed in the end. So it's kind of like the teenager who thinks, oh, I can wreck my car because my parents are going to get me another one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be that way if there was nothing or nobody that would clean it up, fix it for you?
Yeah, it's like just having that in your pocket, kind of going, yeah, I'll just tuck that away. I'm not going to use it. I won't use it. No. But there's something in the back of your mind.
Just in case.
But if I do.
Yeah, and not realizing that ultimately is a huge part of the equation. It's not all of the equation. It's a big part of the equation for why people emotionally eat, binge eat. You know, so you also said you've watched my YouTube videos. Are you on Patreon, the private Patreon group?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm going to be, and it's mostly just because I'm the worst with computers.
It's not a big deal. What I'm trying to figure out is what YouTube videos you're watching. So are they current ones or are they older ones? So they're the older ones.
I think some of them are the older ones, and I've tried to click, like I say, I'm not that great with that because I just use my phone, but it seems like when you go further back, it's a little more focused on HCG,
yes.
And the ones that are a little newer are the more of the binge related, which is
the eating
kind
disorder.
Where I've had the light bulb moment of, okay.
Yeah, and you can do the protocol you want if you're using it as a way to, you know, fix the sense of shame and badness about your body.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're still trapped in it.
Totally. And it can be way worse because the protocol is kind of radical. It's not something anybody should just jump into without self-awareness first. You know, really understanding what you're doing and also being aware that there are risks involved because it's such a removal from food. I don't recommend it unless someone has done a significant amount of evolving emotionally first. So, and to be able to do that
I don't either.
Right.
It can be abusive. It's mean to yourself. Don't hurt your body like that if you're not willing to do the work emotionally, like you said.
Well, a lot of people don't even know that that's what they're doing. They just think when I lose weight, I will feel better about myself. So with that type of simple kind of short-sightedness, which is where most people are, not because they're dumb, it's just because they've been programmed to think like that. You're more likely to have binge eating impulsivity after something like the HCG protocol, something radical. No different than, any type of radical restriction, there's going to be some issues after the fact if especially if you go into something like that and are trying to maintain your weight loss through these radical restrictive diets. You transition off the protocol into something almost equally as restrictive in nature, you're going to end up having impulses, desires, and over exaggerated, emphasis on feasting. The sucky thing is people blame you. Like, you have no self-control. And it's like, well, it's very animalistic, really, what you're dealing with.
And you blame yourself when you feel like, I'm just a failure.
Totally.
Look at this. I can't do this.
Right. And you're not even questioning the restriction
so
as...
Give up.
Yeah. Do you see how short-sighted that is? You're not giving it any context. Like, you just came off of a radically restrictive protocol, and then you're told to continue to radically restrict and now that HCG is gone, you're more hungry. And now you're going to continue to restrict with more hunger. And, at the same time, you're not getting this kind of like benefit of weight loss anymore. Your body's going to be adapting to reality, gaining some weight, and you're still radically restricting some, it's just, and you're supposed to take the blame.
And it was very focused on the scale and, getting that instant gratification.
Yeah, well, that's the only reason why you're
really not healthy.
Well, you're restricting excessively, and you can see why in that type of strain, like you're really straining the survival mechanisms, pressurizing them, keeping them in a tight, tiny little box, right? You can imagine when you're in that space how important the reward becomes. Because why would anybody put themselves in that type of survival mechanisms restraint around food? For fun? There's got to be some type of reward to make it worth it, because it's really intense, right? And so that's why when people do the protocol, that type of intense strain with food, if you don't lose the pound a day, why people get so angry, furious, deserving, I'm angry, that type of like desire, unfulfilled desire, when it's so radical. The restriction is, right? So that's understandable. But again, it's all around why are you doing it? What are you trying to fulfill? Are you trying to fit into a dress? Are you trying to... This is a medical procedure.
Right. And that's usually, when I've done it in the past, has been in desperation. I have a certain thing that I'm like, okay, I have X amount of time, so it has to happen. I have to see these results or else type thing.
Right. Well, and the whole time,
maybe once that passes, then you can kind of go, okay, now I cannot worry about it for a while, and then things start getting out of control, and like you've talked about in some of your videos, the pendulum will start to swing, and
because you got to try to find some like equilibrium, right, around the restriction. And then again, that animal need to feel a sense of safety and completion, and our innate, like animal psychological drive to feel safe with food. Food is required for life to occur, so we have these psychological like wiring. There's nothing you can do about it. It's hardwired into our survival mechanisms to make sure we have adequate food at all cost. You'll die without it.
And it's not the food.
No.
The food's not the enemy.
Right, and that's what you're taught, though, by the diet industry, that the food makes you want to go get it, not your primitive instincts. Right? So they're basically shaming your primitive instincts as an addiction.
Controlled food.
Yeah. Not realizing that that's what's stimulating this primitive, hardwired response. And the more restrictive you are with food, the more intense it gets. It's like a very intense, like it snowballs. It's snowballed for me. because I was so intensely psychologically driven, right, to the body image. So what I've come to learn and become more better at like understanding is the more intense the drive to be thinner, the more intense the drive to restrict, which equates to a more intense kind of like a triggered survival mechanism around obsessing over food. Did you follow that?
Right. I do.
Have you watched any of my videos where I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
I don't know if I've seen that one.
So have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
I have.
It's pretty basic fundamental psychology. I had never heard of it. That's funny thing about it until I was trying to figure this out, and I was looking at survival mode. I think this is survival mode with food, and I looked it up and I was like, oh, well, Maslow did that 50 years ago. You know, like our wiring as animals, our very primitiveness, that is, you can't get rid of that. We're no different than a dog who wants to smell. You know, can you imagine telling a dog that he's addicted to smells? Doesn't that just seem ridiculous?
Yeah.
Well, our need for food is really high. We need a high consumption of food. Humans do, right? And water. So much of our psychological hardwiring is to think about food. It's hardwired. Just like a dog wants to smell.
The funny thing is you said something, one of your videos, well, you said many things in your videos, which I love, and I've taken notes and studying this, and it's not, because I really was thinking, I'm just a food addict. I'm addicted to sugar.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as it all made sense, and I figured out that it's not the food, and I gave myself the freedom to say, I'm not going to diet anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. This is crazy. I don't feel like I want to binge anymore. I'm like, I could go have all the sugar I wanted. It doesn't even matter.
And what happened to then
I don't even want to.
Right? So the impulse is like, oh, well then I can have it when I want, and there's no badness attached to it. So when you just said, I decided I'm never going to diet anymore. Dieting is not just food restriction, right? It is the food shaming, the food morality, right? The bad, fearful. You can't eat that. That's bad for you. It's that kind of moralistic darkness that hovers around the food. The diet industry is, and it changes all the time, right?
Yes.
I know. So the badness of food. When I talk about dieting, I'm not just talking about food restriction. I'm talking about the badness of food. You're no longer going to comply to this ideology around good and bad food. Like
I had demonized bananas for I don't even know how many years. I was like, oh
my God, this simple carbohydrates. Right, but there's no, it's got all these vitamins and there's all sorts of benefits to them. What if they sound good to you? What if you love bananas? That's no different than before it being demonizing peanut butter. It's so fattening, so high in calories. It just changes all the time. And you can't have anything acidic now. You can't have tomatoes, any of the nightshades. You can't have any peppers. All of those are so bad for your gut. Broccoli is causing cancer. I mean, for reals.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is fucking nuts. That's what that is. But I'm not judging that because it sounds like someone in extreme survival mode, right? Where food is your bear, right? Me too. I have too. And you wonder, right? And you wonder why you're binging on these things, right? It's like, oh, is it really a vacuum where it's just the food? Is it the pleasure? Is it the pleasure of food? Is that why you're binging? I mean, that is so.
No.
Like really, you're.
I can binge on the worst, cheapest crackers that are just stale and gross, but it doesn't matter.
No, because you're just trying to get in bad food.
Stuff it down.
It's just whatever's labeled bad, I'll eat it.
Yeah, like emotional form of cutting. Yeah. Just get it in there. And
Because there's gonna come a point where you gotta stop, right? And you're not gonna do it anymore. So whatever you need right now, get it done right now, so that you can go back into that little restrictive cage, so that you can recover, like fix the damages you're doing. You have to go back in the restriction, but you need the restriction. Because you see, you can't control yourself, but no one ever questions the restrictions, right? As the source of the problem. And not just the restrictions, but the shaming and demonizing of food as if it is catastrophic, like getting killed by a bear, right? So if I get, and life and death is kind of like you're dead or you're alive. It's pretty black and white, right? There's no kind of gray around. You're alive and then you're dead. So that's how the brain processes threat. If I'm around a bear, I'm going to die. Oh, he's attacked me. I'm dead. So why fight? It's similar. It's a similar kind of like coping or distortion when you're looking at food as if it is like a predator. Your brain is, if food is identified as a predator, as the diet industry and the health industry, if you want to call it that, has promoted, if you eat those chips, your health is ruined. Ruined. You've already ruined it. Your whole day of purity and cleanliness, dirty. Do you see how that kind of cognitive distortion, the catastrophizing and the all or nothing around that? That's like life or death. And that's how the brain works when it comes to fight or flight and life and death and survival mode, right?
And there's no peace.
And there's no questioning the authority. Well, and the funny thing is they're the authority because they say they are, right? Selling whatever they're selling, I'm the authority. No one questions the kind of fear mongering and how that's impacting the psychological mind. The survival mechanisms of the minds of those who are following it. Right? So if you're told, if you eat stuffing and the dressing on Thanksgiving, you're going to gain like 20 pounds this holiday season. Well, what happens when you have a couple bites of it?
You won't at all.
You're screwed. You already failed. You failed. So then there's this overwhelming understanding that the holiday season is all here and I've just already ruined it. So what are you going to do until January 1?
Just let go and wait to fix it later.
Yeah, you're going to sign up for some sugar detox in January. You're going to get rid of all carbs. You're going to do intermittent fasting. You're going to get on the keto bandwagon, which is basically the Atkins bandwagon from 20 years ago. Same shit. And then and then what do you think that does once you make that decision to how much you're eating during the holidays? Just like, you might as well just...
And you have that guilt while you're eating it. The guilt and shame that you're stuffing down. And then you're just have to fix this later, and I shouldn't be doing this.
And then you just hide. And what's the likelihood you're going to go out? Yeah, it's a horrible situation. So anyway, so let's get back to what your needs are. Okay, what is it that you're looking for with us? Like, what do you want? What do you need? Well, it's not you. Don't identify by this. This is actually all human beings under the same belief system, right? The belief of thinnerness is betterness, right? I call that thinner supremacy. Like white supremacy, whiter is better. This is the same exact narcissistic system that says fatter women are inferior, thinner women are superior. It's no different than in China with foot binding. Smaller feet makes you superior. It's like
more worthy of love.
Totally, it's a very superficial understanding. It's like, again, and this is survival-oriented hardwiring. It is safer to make a snap judgment about someone superficially than to take the time to get to know them. Truth.
Right.
That's true. That's how our brains work. So we can sit here and demonize it, or we can just look at it and go, oh, making snap decisions about someone's value is part of the survival hardwiring when someone intrinsically feels unsafe with other humans, right? Someone who feels adequate with themselves, adequate within and how they relate to people, are they going to make snap decisions about someone's value as a human based on the way they look? Versus some comparatively, Mike, right? So what we're comparing is someone who feels intrinsically confident in how they are, in their ability to adapt to others, compared to someone who is insecure with themselves and doesn't feel safe with others. So those are the two things we're comparing. Which person is going to be safer criticizing or making snap judgments about the way someone looks?
The person who's insecure.
Totally. Right. Is that a bad thing? Or is that just, that makes sense?
It's bad for them.
But it makes sense for their internal sense of themselves, right? Of course they're white supremacists, thin supremacists, long hair. They're more likely to gravitate to all of those superficial dogma belief systems, right? If I'm thinner, I'm more valuable. If I'm fitter, those are all superficial mechanisms, superficial ways to try to feel safe with yourself and with others, right? But they're very predictable. They're very socially constructed concepts, right? So if I or you don't feel safe with yourself and with others in relation to how we work with each other as pack animals, if you don't feel good about yourself and you don't feel like you have a good sense of relating to others, you're more likely to gravitate to these superficial concepts. Because there's some safety in the idea that if I'm thinner, I'll be safe from criticism. Does that make sense?
Right.
So you're trying to, yeah. So that's what I meant by, of course, that's worse for that person, but it makes sense for their internal sense of inadequacy. When I felt that way, I latched onto body image like it is my survival. Because I didn't have any sense of my sense of anything personal. I had no sense of any real sense of Robin. There was nothing there. It was empty, right? So what am I going to present to the world if I meet someone? What am I going to present if I don't really have a sense of myself? I'm going to present the superficial concept of value. Like I'm a good person. So I'm going to tell you about all my achievements. I'm going to tell you about my religion because that religion is what made me feel good about myself. I'm going to try to accentuate my body. Here's my body. Look at me. Because that's what gives me a sense of social something positive, right?
Right.
Compared to, someone who has a real internal sense of their trueness, their nature. There's, what are they going to necessarily gravitate to? I have to, are they going to necessarily become a chameleon, if you want to call that? I look like you. Are they going to do that? Probably not. So anyways, my point is, it's a survival mechanism to be critical about someone's superficial looks. It's something that we do if we feel bad about ourselves and we want to, and inadequate too, insecure. I want to gravitate to people that I can trust. And how do you know you trust someone if you don't know them? What's their political leaning?
Right.
What religion are they?
Yeah. One of those.
Yeah, it's super predictable brainwash programming. That's what you're going to gravitate to.
Well,
so it's understandable.
So you asked me what I need.
Yeah.
I would say I've been on a tricycle, and I'd like to learn to ride the bike. That doesn't make sense.
It does make sense. You want to grow. You want to evolve.
And I'm like, can you help me ride the bike? I'm on the bike. Okay, I'm off the tricycle. I have training wheels now. Like I get it. I get the big bike. And I got the training wheels on. I don't want to die more. I want that, you know.
So what does your instincts tell you to get back on the...
more diet books.
Got it.
More lists.
Okay, but hold on. That would be the tricycle, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Writing everything down.
Totally, that's your tricycle. So, which is super easy. You figure that out. Like, it doesn't even take much thought. You just do it, right?
Yep.
So, but it's so
I've been
limited.
on that for decades.
Yeah, and you're sick and tired of it. So, do you want the tricycle?
It's making me worse.
So, I need to know this. Is this something, do you want to keep your tricycle? Like, are you... I just want to get back on the tricycle. I know I shouldn't, but it's safe. It's comfortable. So you've thrown away the bicycle. Or you've thrown away the tricycle. Got it.
I don't own a tricycle anymore.
It's not an option. So you don't even want it.
It's not an option.
You'd rather not. Okay.
It's ridiculous. It actually makes me sick. I still have... Stuff still pops up on, like, you know, in your news feed on Facebook or whatever that's called. And
oh, yeah.
And it just instant, like, oh no, I'm so sorry for those people that are having to post before and afters, and
yeah, because you kind of see what's going to happen in the long run.
What they ate and what they didn't eat.
Got it. Okay, so you are off the tricycle. That's awesome. Okay, so that tells me where you're at. That's good. But you're still feeling bad about yourself?
No. I feel really good. I've had the happiest year of my life. It's been a great year. But I was driving down the road the other day, and there's been this homeless man that lays out in the grass in the park every day for a year. 12 months he's been laying there. And I was driving down the road, and I looked over, and like, oh, there he is again. And I had this instant flash of, oh my gosh, I'm the same as that. And at the time, I didn't have time to really give it much thought, but it just was in the back of my mind all day. And I really realized later on that night, I was like, that's because he's just laying there. He's just been wasting his life. I don't know his story, anything about him. It makes me sad for him, but that's how he's chosen to live his life, I guess.
He could be in bliss. Have you ever heard of Eckhart Tolle? He wrote New Earth, The Power of Now. Have you ever heard of him?
Well, I've heard of him, but I haven't ever...
He was homeless for years, blissing out in homelessness. Just like connecting...
Right, and it may work for him. That maybe he...
Well, it did for a while. Yeah, like maybe... what do they need? Maybe. You know, what you were doing, this is something to know too. What you were doing is projecting your sense of misery onto that person. As if you can't handle that, right?
I was looking at him and I realized doing the diet thing is the same. I just was, how can I convey that? I related to that I've wasted so much time being on that tricycle and being the equivalent of just laying in the grass.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get anywhere.
But at least he's enjoying it.
Around and around and around.
I was just going to say, at least he's enjoying it.
I was like, dang it, I should have just laid in the grass.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're actually worse than that person. They're content.
Yeah, I literally was
you're not.
My body and mentally torturing myself over, oh no, I just ate an ounce too much chicken. Now what am I going to do?
Yeah. Okay, so tell me this. Where are you at today? And where... I know you're like, I've got my training wheels on. What do I do now? So really where we go from here is I got to get to understand what that is. What does that mean? Where you're at? Where are your limits? What do you, like, where is the block for you? Do you have any blocks? Do you still care about your weight?
I'm sure I do, and I think that's why I want to talk to you, because I feel like there's work to be done. Mm-hmm. I'm just getting started on this, learning to ride the bike by myself thing.
Got it. Like, so you're just hoping to streamline your learning curve.
Yes, and now that I have the vision and you have the vision, I'm like, okay, can I just tag along and like you go no, okay, whenever I'm like but
So in my mind, what I see is you're going to fall on your freaking face. And what my goal would be is that you don't go back to the tricycle because it's easier. And at least it doesn't hurt you that you're aware of, right? Because you know that as well as I do, the tricycle is like staying stuck in a very...
I'm taking off the training wheels. I'm like, I'm riding this bike.
Yeah, so where I go from here is, well then, awesome, you're going to fall so many times and just get over it. Get over it. Expect to fall. Expect to be like, right? Expect that someone's going to look at you and think you're ugly, that your bike is ugly. You're not on the right bike. Your bike is so old, inadequate. It's not the coolest. You're not going to be in the cool bike club, right? People are going to think that you are doing it all wrong, that you're crazy, that because you're on a bike, you're more likely to die. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to die on a bike.
That's not safe.
Because a tricycle is so much safer. Yeah, and totally, I love that. I love that. This is really easy. This makes it easy for me. Thanks for bringing that bike thought. So that's so where what I need to understand is, where are your limits? Do you, and just be honest. Do you, don't repress any reality here. Do you in any way feel bad about your body?
Well, if I get back on the tricycle, of course. I'm a good 30, 35 pounds overweight, which isn't a big deal. And, I'm not like, nobody's going to point and stare or laugh or anything, really. I mean, do you have any embarrassment?
Do you have any embarrassment going out in public? Do you have any like, oh, I don't want people to see you? Do you have any hesitation with your body?
No.
Okay. So do you have any
too badly? No.
Do you have any fear of gaining more weight?
I get a little uneasy.
Okay, so that's where we're at.
Whenever I start to think that.
Okay.
But I immediately go into, but if you're going to tell me I have to weigh and measure my food one more time, no.
You'd rather be overweight.
I can't do it anymore.
Okay, would you rather be overweight? So that might be...
I would rather be overweight.
Okay, so that's where we're at. That tells me where we're at. So, like...
So here's the thing.
I would rather be 500 pounds. I'd rather be completely incapacitated. Like, for me, my recovery came when I was willfully surrendering my legs, my physical capacity for freedom, right? So I went up to 500 pounds. Like, I'd rather have, my legs rubbed, not being able to move. I'm so fat. That to me is a better situation. That's like the homeless guy in the park. I'd rather be the homeless guy in the park. So fat, I can't move. I just have to sit on a park bench. That's like such a better deal. You see, that makes sense? So the physicality of the body. So this is where our work will begin. Would be right here.
Well, I also the reason I went ahead and signed up. I went back and forth. I was like, no, don't do it. No, I got this. I'm like, seriously, I did back and forth. I was like, okay, just do it. But there was a lady that you interviewed, and I was like, okay, I can relate to her. That's the one. And I should have written down, I don't remember which one it was.
What video? Yeah.
I can't remember.
It doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. No. But it was talking about when to know if you're really free. And she was putting to the test, like, well, could you handle? Okay, you're okay with this body that you're in now, but could you handle it if, you had the thinner body and you had the attention that you had before? Like, are you really free? Like, that test. And I was like, well, I don't know how I would do with that. My fear is, I don't even know if fear is the right word. I don't think I can handle it. So I'm like, so that bugs me. Because now I'm like, oh, so I've got this little closet that I don't want anybody to see.
Yeah, so that tells me...
I can't clean that out.
Yeah, so...
I'm like, well, I kind of want to clean it out.
Right, and face your shit. So what this tells me
Yeah.
is, so compared to where you were, it's exponentially better, right?
Yes.
So, but that tells me that you still are in a cage. There's still a cage. It's a bigger cage. It's like way more roomy, right? A lot more freedom, less impulsiveness. So there's a lot of probably like psychological symptoms like OCD gone, right? That's miraculous, by the way, because that's something that people define you as.
It is miraculous.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could feel this.
Right? It's like, holy shit.
Miraculous.
It's miraculous, and it's like this unwinding that didn't take medication, right? So there's stages to this recovery from body image. Okay? And that's what it is. It's a body image recovery. If I were to put them on like bullet points, and this is not necessarily in order of how it occurs. The first bullet point is you have to surrender forever, permanently, the concept of betterment through body image. So I will feel any better. Any type of image of improvement has to be removed. Anything thinner, if we want to use this concept of thin supremacy, has to be blacked out permanently forever. I will never, ever be thinner than this. So that's bullet point 1. Bullet point 2 is typically simultaneous with 1, which is I have to accept the body I have currently. It's ailments, it's negativeness, it's badness, people's judging me-ness, all of that, right? The third point is I have to be okay with the vulnerability of the body doing what it's going to do. So I might gain weight, right? The willingness to go into the fear, apprehension, and hope that you don't gain weight. You have to be able to go there. That's like, what if it gets worse? You need to be open to that. That's a third bullet point. Some people start there. Some people start right there. You know, like anorexics have to start right there because they cannot continue to maintain their ultra leanness. They have to be willing to gain weight, right? And some people, like, it sounds like you started at bullet point 1 and 2, and you're kind of at 3 right now.
Right, that's probably right.
4 is that you've got to be neutral if you lose weight too. You got to not attach to it, not care about it, not use it as a bonus. Like, you've got to get rid of any biased delight in being thinner, right? And the 5th point is if you do lose weight, you got to not give a shit if you regain it all too. So it's regained weight lost. You have to not care. Do you see how that kind of hits all aspects of body image?
I do.
In terms of thinner supremacy, right? So the problem with 3 is that you're still believing that thinnerness is better. You still believe it. You might have accepted failure and loss, and you might still believe in failure and loss. You're just more accepting of it at this point. You've kind of like surrendered to the fact that you'll always be inadequate. And just by accepting that to some degree is hugely beneficial, right? But the belief in that still comes at a cost. So there's still costs to it. Like, you have to overcompensate somewhere else. You know, a lot of people who accept that, well, I shouldn't use acceptance. I should use they've tolerated it, right? I tolerate the fact that I'm fat and ugly, okay? They typically will, because they still believe it's a bad, they'll try to overcompensate somewhere else to say, but I'm good. So they'll be like, well, I might be fat, but I'm really successful in business, or I'm going to go back into religion and focus on that because I want to have some sense of goodness. So you're trying to find some sense of compensation. I'm going to compensate with the badness here to find some goodness there. So even with that, there's a huge release from like the binging, but you're still going to be emotional eating, right? There's still going to be some boundary issues with food because you still feel bad about your weight. You're just repressing it through some form of compensation. So, and then the fear of gaining, ultimately what'll happen if you are overeating, what comes back if you're still apprehensive about gaining weight? Are you following me right now?
I'm listening, and I'm also going over my, in my own head going, okay, how do I apply to that? How do I feel about that?
Yeah, where am I at? Getting her kind of like,
where am I at on that?
Orienting yourself.
Right.
So, yeah. So that would be from just listening to where you're at, that would be my guess. Oh, she's right around 3 on that third point where she's apprehensive about gaining, doesn't want to face it. Hope that she doesn't. Yeah. So it's...
I've had a great year of that because I have been bigger, and I've been so happy. And my husband loves me, tells me, he's, very happy with me.
What if he wasn't?
I don't feel like...
What if he wasn't happy?
He would love me more. He would...
I want to know what would happen if he wasn't.
I don't feel like anybody would love me more or approve me more, want to be with me more, whatever.
What if he wasn't happy with your weight? What would that do?
Well, I've been in that boat too, where I thought he wasn't happy with my weight.
What if he really wasn't?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said, what if he truthfully was not happy? Not attracted to you?
That would be his problem. That would not be my problem.
Was that an intellectual answer, or was that like, I'm not willing to starve anymore for anybody?
No, that was real. That was...
Oh, that's huge. Okay. Can you see why I asked that question?
I think that it's kind of one of those I think that I know that just for us personally that he loves me for more than just that, and
can you
he wouldn't want that for me.
Do you understand why I asked the question?
Health reasons, but not...
Got it. It's not even about your health. Do you understand why I asked the question? Why I would ask you that? Like, why I would ask that? Do you know why?
Why you would ask if I would be okay if
he did care.
If he would be okay?
Yeah.
If he cared. I think I do.
What do you think? I'm trying to get bearings around where you're at. Why would I ask how you would respond if he totally cared about your weight?
If I would get back on the tricycle and try to...
Yeah, if it's internally accepted, or if he's reinforcing. Yeah, is he reinforcing this? Is that why you're comfortable? Or is it because you are making a decision irrelevant to what his opinion is?
Oh, absolutely me.
Yeah, see, that's good. That's awesome.
It doesn't matter. No one could convince me that there's a book. There's a new book out, and if you sprinkle sand on your food, it will make you thin.
you would have totally done it because you won't eat it. That's hilarious.
Really? Okay.
So what if he comes to you and says, I'm concerned about your health?
I hesitate just because I'm thinking, well, I don't think that...
Don't say what you think I want to hear.
I can't see that being an issue.
Yeah,
I can't see that.
I want you to answer like not with what you think I want to hear.
Because if that happened, that would mean that I had just been binging out of control, and that's miserable. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to hurt my body that way.
No, it doesn't have to happen because you binged. It doesn't have to happen because you binged. It could happen just because he's associating disease with weight. So he thinks that you're unhealthy because of your weight, right? You don't have to be binging.
Oh.
What if he comes and says, I'm really concerned about your health?
No, I wouldn't worry about that either. So I think that's silly. I don't think that's...
Yeah. Okay. See, I'm just trying to kind of pick in here and see if there's anything. That's awesome. So you've really made a ton of progress. Holy shit.
This whole year has been a lot of work and journaling. Oh my goodness. And I've looked back over my journals going, oh, help this person. Get out of that.
I know, right? It's sad.
And all the people out there that are in the same boat. Just
not questioning the
love yourself and
the dogma.
Yeah.
So
don't make the food the enemy. It's great. It is great. Like since the light bulb stand in the kitchen and go, like a little kid, and go, oh, my stomach's growling. What am I going to eat?
Yeah.
And then just, if I have a little moment of, I shouldn't eat that banana, I'm like, that banana sounds really good. I'm going to eat it and enjoy it and stop whenever I don't want to eat it anymore. And it doesn't matter if I only eat half of it, or I don't care. Waste it. Throw it away. Doesn't matter.
What was your life? What was your life like before, compared to before? Like that. I know the significance of what you just said. That is like miraculous. It's like, how did this happen? Because that's impossible from the previous mindset, right? That's impossible.
Yeah.
So what was your previous mindset? So give me a comparison to what it was before. The banana.
Just, I would have gone over every diet plan I'd ever had and thought, where does it fit in? How many ounces could I have? If I have that, then don't eat X for lunch, or just the pendulum,
Doesn't that just give you a headache thinking about it?
Bargaining. It does. It's exhausting.
I know, it's so much work for a goddamn banana.
Yeah. I didn't write my meal down. I didn't commit to it. I didn't tell my friend and text her that I would not eat a banana today, and oh no, I'm going to eat the banana.
Yeah. Question.
It's embarrassing. I hope nobody sees me eat the banana.
Eat the banana because it's so shameful. Eating bananas I'm so ashamed, right? Because bananas are worthy of shame, you piece of crap.
Oh, shame.
Okay, so really quick question. Again, I need you to be just brutally honest with yourself. With me, don't answer what you think I want to hear. Just be totally brutally honest. What would happen if you never again? This was your permanent weight forever. It's never going to change. You're going to be like between this weight where you're at today and 10 pounds heavier for the rest of your life. How does that feel? That's the initial feeling that you get. It's never going to get smaller.
I would be okay. I would be okay.
That's it? Nothing?
Nothing. I would be okay. I really... Yep. I'm okay.
Any relief?
If it means never having to weigh and measure my food and starve myself, or that would be great.
Does it feel is there like any moment of like, oh, there's relief, any type of relief? Don't worry about the food aspect. Just go right into the relationship between you and the body. If I was over here and I'm like a, fortune teller, and I sit here and go, okay, you're never going to be thinner than this. In fact, your body's going to be between this weight and 20 pounds heavier permanently forever, the rest of your life. End of story. Is there any relief?
I would be okay with that. I'm healthy. I feel good. I wake up.
I know. I really think about what I want you to answer like very specific. The question is very specific. Is there any relief? Any like,
yes.
Oh, thank God. Oh.
There's relief.
Okay, that tells me a little bit. Okay. That tells me that you still have some strain with the pressure. There's a little pressure in there to be thinner than this. Again, none of this is bad. Your answer isn't a bad thing. It's not. It just gives me a sense of there is a little pressure in your mind around body image. The
pressure, maybe what you hear is that I think I'm still kind of like, but I'm okay with this. But I think that if I were to, I want to know, I want to rule out, I want to know, what if I were thinner, would I go, oh, I have to maintain this, I have to fight for
totally.
this now,
So,
I have to go back into
totally. That's what that is.
XYZ.
Well, and
So I feel like I'm not free. I feel like I'm...
That's why you're here.
Like, well, am I really free?
This is why my guess is why you contacted me is right here. Because you can sense there's still like a little grip on the idea. So this is common. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is so common when people come to me and they find me is they give themselves a temporary reprieve. They do everything. It is a miraculous. There's relief. Depression goes away. That's been there for years. There is this ease, and it's like a space and room where there's no pressure, and it's amazing, right? But they've only in their mind done it because it's almost like unconscious knowledge. At some point, my weight will get fixed. At some point, right? And it could be associated with if I don't binge anymore, if I eat to hunger, my body weight could potentially fix itself, and I don't even have to worry about it. So I'm putting this whole insanity on pause. I'm pushing the pause button, and you get this incredible recovery. It feels like a recovery. So,
but then what do you do to maintain that recovery?
Well, it's temporary, which means at some point there is pressure that builds because you get to a place where could I restrict food and not go crazy? Is this the point at which I can actually do the protocol to fix what I eventually said would be fixed? Because now I don't have an eating disorder. I don't have binge eating. I'm not disordered around my food consumption. I have all this freedom that I've lived with for a year or whatever. Could I actually now go back and fix the body the way that I always said I would, right?
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
That's where I am.
That's why I asked that question around if I said you will never lose weight again. You're always going to be that. What that does is it basically says that initial idea of losing weight, it's permanently removed now forever. So that means I really don't have to care about my weight. So do you see how you're still in a cage? It's a bigger cage. It's a way better cage. It's still a cage.
It's still a cage.
You're still in a cage because it's still there. You're still holding on to the idea that I should lose weight. It would be better if I were thinner. It's just not worth it if I have to suffer anymore. But there may be a way I can still get it without suffering. So you're still holding on to thinner, like a concept.
Maybe, but as you say that, I think, would it be better if I were thinner?
Well, you'd have to.
I don't know that it would.
Well, it does. I do. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's a concept of betterment. It's not necessarily a reality. If you don't care if you stay fat forever, permanently, forever and forever, then none of it matters. It's irrelevant either way because your way of existing in your own awareness is unconditional with the body. You could lose a finger, you could have back problems, you could get hit by a car, become a paraplegic, and all of that becomes like you just adapt to it because you're connecting with life and the source of life versus the actual constraints of the body. That's where the goal is. It's really not as complicated as that might sound. It's really not. It just means that you're kind of over the physical body. You appreciate it. It's like it is the source of, it's providing you a conduit to be aware of the environment we're in, your eyeballs, your hearing, your sight, your taste, the ability to communicate. The body is giving all of that to you. So how important is it then that you have 5 pounds less fat or 10 pounds more fat? How important is that detail?
It's really not that much. It's not going to change my life.
Nothing. It does nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you buy new clothes because you can't fit into the ones that required you starve or whatever. Or you're going to go through menopause and yeah, okay. So are you going to complain about?
I didn't care one way or the other.
Correct.
No one really. I mean,
it's irrelevant to the life source.
About themselves to micromanage, and if they do, that's their problem.
Yeah. So when it comes down to, you will never ever be thinner. You will always be this size. If you get this like, oh, that's amazing, that tells me you're still holding on to the pressure to fix the body somehow, as if it's important or needed. And it could have been unconscious. It's like, I'm going to put that on hold. It was in a pause. So you didn't have to think about it.
Right.
So the goal would be, even in this consult, if I can get you to do it in this consult, because it can happen so quick, is for you to realize that the thinness, the fatterness, the leg mobility, your hearing, your sight, all of that stuff is irrelevant. You're still conscious if you're blind. You're still conscious if you can't hear anymore. You're still aware of that you're alive. Right? So what do you want to use? What do you want to do with that, the life you're witnessing? Because the body's providing you some aspect of witnessing life. Do you really need to focus on the body with that life? Or can you move and focus out towards expansive potential of all infinite capacity in lifetime? Think of how many ways you can experience life with this exact body. With this body, if it gets hit by a car and you become a paraplegic. With this body, if you end up with cancer. With this body, if your head is shaved. What if your head is shaved? What happens to that consciousness? Right? So I think that's where you're at. I think that's my assumption based on talking to you.
Yeah, I just feel like
we need to get
one
you there.
Of the videos you had shared was like, it seemed like when you're so focused on dieting and binging, that everything is in your life is just more sucking into you. Like you're just this black hole. Yeah, it's just like cannibalizing the soul. You're soulless, but your life is you're a slave, right? There's no person or personal self. It's all just a conceptual. It's a concept of what you have to do, right? Thinking that eventually you'll get to that personal self. And you can't, because you're trying to create conditions around what that is through the body. Did that make any sense, what I just said? Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure you're understanding it. So our goal is that you completely, the goal with this work, at least from what I'm aware of, because I can only guide you to my current awareness. I can't go beyond that, right? Is to open you up to see the irrelevance of the condition of the body if it is conscious. What do you need? Do you really need to focus on your weight in any way ever again? Even if you lose weight, what does it matter? What happens if your body loses weight? Do you get excited? I don't know. Do you become super? Yeah, in the past I have, but now, going forward, I wonder if that would just be more of a, just getting right back into, now I have to, how would I handle that? How would you handle that? Yeah. Does it matter? So if you're hesitant, I feel like then how would I know if would it matter? Are you asking, would it matter if I were, if I were thinner? Yeah. Sorry, ask the question again. I don't think I understand. No, it's would it matter if no, it's okay. It was just that question. Go into losing weight if you were thinner, and be honest. Don't repress the truth, because this is where we're getting a sense of, where you're oriented right now.
If you were to lose weight and you could see it in the mirror and your clothes are fitting differently, and how would you feel about that? Just tell the truth.
I would feel good about that.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, I would not want to have to punish myself and deny myself peace and freedom to maintain it. I'd like to
So
be free of that.
Here's where the conflict is, right? And what you just said.
Right. Can I have both?
You can't. The problem is if you...
Did you say I can or I can't?
You cannot. It doesn't work right. That's not... You can't get, the freedom of not caring if you get gratification from a condition of it. Because what happens to the
work on that.
Yeah, so because if you're getting gratification off of the weight loss, you realize that the body has built-in mechanisms to gain weight very quickly and easy. So if you're getting gratification and pleasure, secret pleasure, if you want to call it that, unconscious pleasure of betterment by the body losing weight, what happens to your focus? So that freedom.
It's done to my body.
Yep, it just turned inward again. Now it's about you. It's not about life. It's about me. It's about the me.
I think whenever you said when you look in the mirror, I was thinking of it as if I just wake up one day and, boop, you're, smaller or thinner or whatever word you want to use, then what do you feel? And I think, that would be cool.
That's
great. Then my first thought would be, oh crap, what do I have to do to maintain this now?
Well, yeah, once you get the cool feeling, the coolness actually is coming from what? Where do you get, oh, cool? Where does that come from? Oh, awesome. Oh, positive. Whatever it is, it's the symbolic positiveness. Where is that coming from?
I don't know, I guess just you'd be able to maybe wear certain clothes that,
So let me give you a parallel to that expression. So imagine you're in China and you're foot binding, okay? And you wake up and your feet look smaller and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Why would someone feel awesome about that?
Because that is their culture's idea of beauty.
Correct. And you believe it. You believe it is true. And so you feel beautiful with smaller feet. Okay? There's been other times in centuries and centuries of human existence where there was tons of disease and a lot of plague and a lot of stuff, and being fatter was seen as healthier. You're going to survive disease. It's also a sign that you have income and money to support yourself and your family, and it was really symbolized as like superior. You're not just safe from disease, you're healthier, your family's happier, you have less mental illness if you're fatter. Because thinner people died, had more trauma, were poor, and had more mental illness, right? So can you imagine waking up and feeling more plump in that time, how that would feel? You wake up, and how do you feel when you see yourself a little more plump?
So hot.
Boobs are bigger, right? Because big breasts were another sign of that, right? For women, that was sexualized. As you're safe, you're going to have pregnancy. It's all a sign of you're going to survive. Life, survival. That's what it is. It really translates down to that. So you'd wake up and be like, cool. right? So here we are living in a culture that is doing the same thing with thinnerness. It's like body binding. It's not like foot binding. It's body binding through the diets. You're done binding, but my God, if you wake up thinner, awesome. So do you see where we're at right now?
Yes.
Yeah, you still have it there. It's still there. You're not actively wanting it, but it's still hope. There's still hope. Would be awesome. That means you're still constrained in that space. There's still constraint around your awareness. So the goal is that we can, like, you want to ride a bike, you're going to have to get beyond that, right?
Right.
You got to take those training wheels off and be okay with fatness. And do you really want to get excited if your body loses weight? Do you really want to care about that? What happens if you care about that? Got to keep your eye on it.
Yeah, for it.
Got to keep your eye on it. What does that do to your focus on life? Is it going out or is it going in? Going out to infinite space outside, or is it going in towards me, which is survival mode, right? Self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
This is really about exploring who you really are. It's like an identity crisis. Who are you? What is the truth? Are you the body? Are you thinness? Are you fatness? What is this? So really breaking free beyond the concept of me as an attractive body. Right? Get beyond that. So that you can feel there's a very distinct difference between if the body's thin and the existence of experiencing life. Because if you want to experience life, do you really want to focus in on your thinness?
No.
That's totally, they're different, right? You can, so if you get gratification off of thinness, are you really experiencing your life?
No.
You're not. You haven't quite broken free from that survival space. We want you to I don't care. If I lose, why would I even care if I lost weight? It's irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to think about it. So if you don't want to think about it, then you got to just not care or not use it for any type of gratification. If it naturally happens, good for the body. I don't care. It's not for me. So do you see how you can separate the me from the body versus my body? My body is claiming ownership of it as if it is you versus a body. If the body's thinner, what does that do for you?
The only thing I can think of is that if you were able to, if your body, I don't know what it is, but if a person's body is so big that they can't, literally experience life, to the fullest because it restricts them.
See, that's relative, to be honest with you. If you were, that's relative because what you're saying is that by having legs that move. You
can't fit in a roller coaster seat or, an airplane.
Yeah, but that's not, but I guess this is where I'm going to look crazy. And I get that. To me, there's no difference between someone who is, so let's just say a quadriplegic, who has infinite capacity to absorb life and think and understand or read or hear music and focus in on so many infinite ways to experience a quote unquote roller coaster in a different process. Do we really have to define the capacity of the body by a roller coaster? That's so limiting. That makes sense? So no matter what, whether you're mobile or you're not mobile, you're still experiencing a potential infinite space of capacity. It's not about the mobility of the body. That just means what you're experiencing is dynamically about the earth, not so much about your consciousness. So, for example, Stephen R. Hawking's. Do you know who that is? Dr. Stephen R. Hawking's.
Mm-hmm.
He's the smartest man. He recently died. He had Lou Gehrig's disease, a slow version of it, right? World-renowned astrophysicist who spent the majority of his life completely paralyzed. Couldn't talk. Couldn't eat. Computers did that for him. Do you see how it's like he was able to unlock some of the most intelligent awareness about the universe? Because we could say potentially because he didn't have the physical distraction of a roller coaster. So in relation to him, being able-bodied would be limiting. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does.
Right? So it's like, okay, how do you want to see it? Because that was biased towards thin capacity. It was a bias, like, so what I just said is, well, hold on, because relative to someone who's extremely intelligent would say, why would you focus on something so stupid when there's so much infinite roller coasters in thinking, in awareness, or in intellect? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Just be aware that the idea that thinnerness is providing more life is absolute brainwashing from thin conceptualization. There are people out there who are paraplegics who can never walk again, or they can't do anything, and it's really relative to what they want to explore in life. That's really what it comes down to. So let's just imagine you get hit by a car and you'll never walk again. What is the most advantageous position to be in that place? Is it to feel sorry for yourself because you're never going to be able to run again or hike again? Is that advantageous?
No.
Not at all. So you can see it's like, well, which direction do you want to point your life? Because if you're going to feel sorry for yourself, it's not going anywhere. It's negative. Right? You're now disabled. Blah. Life sucks. Or you can go for a life open to what your body can handle, what you can do, what you can explore, what brings you joy with what you have, right? So in that case, are you disabled? No, you're totally able-bodied within what you can do. So you're able to, yeah. So going back to this concept of why would you get any benefit even if you were morbidly obese? Is it really beneficial to be thinner? Only if you position your life to feel that way.
Right. I can see that.
Okay, so I'm kind of going to the radical extreme, right? Just so that I can if there's any bias towards thinnerness, we have to unweave it. So that's a radical thought process. I get that. That's why I said I'm going to look crazy right now. But I'm going to go to the radical extreme so that you can kind of like start over with this relationship with the body. What do you really need from it? Because let's just think of the infinite ways that your body can become disabled and die, right?
Right. I get that. I think, I guess as you're talking, I'm thinking about, well, okay, as this relates to me, there's part of it that I have, I have a thyroid problem, and I've done this yo-yo dieting. I've been binging dieting for years, and now that I'm kind of like, okay, well, I've seen the light. I've had the epiphany. I get it. I don't want to be on the tricycle anymore. I want to not be a slave to the NECA diet. Now cleaning out the closets and healing and, are you saying that's a bad thing?
No, not at all. No, not.
I understand where you're coming from.
Not at all. What I'm saying is, okay, so you've realized that trying to make the body something with dieting is horrible. It's miserable. It's like a death sentence. You might as well just,
It is.
Okay, so you've realized the damages of that behavior. Do you realize the damages of wanting to change your body?
Psychologically?
Yeah, because you're knowing the damages of dieting. You get that point, but do you really get that you only diet if you want to change your body?
Yes.
Right? So what I'm saying is, let's go into wanting to change your body. Right? Because that's the source of why you suffered for so long. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have done all the dieting if you didn't think that there was something wrong with your body.
Right.
So thinking something's wrong with your body, that has to be addressed. Is that simple? That's it. Even thyroid, like thyroid problem, that's a symptom. Is there really a problem? And what if it's there forever? Right? So what we're trying to do is like really go into the body, your relationship with this body. Its ailments, its aging, it's everything. And also your relationship with some idea of something better. So you can't have a judgment of the body unless you have an idea of what it should or supposed to be. Right? So that's where I'm saying we just got to go in there and let's blow it up. Let's start opening that up. Right? Because if in any way, you are, if you want to fix your body in any way, with the idea that you're going to feel better about it, right? Because I have a Band-Aid on my finger right now. That's fixing my body. That's protecting it, right? I go to the doctor. I get, is that saying that we're trying to protect the body? Is that, well, it's to feel better about it, to feel better about yourself, right? So the goal would be that you have a very distinct separation between the alma or the soul and the body, that they're not intertwined anymore. So your capacity to love and appreciate life, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you want to exist in, right?
Right.
You got to be able to adapt to the reality of a universe and a earth and a body that's organic, right? That has infinite potential of being pained and hurt and, ailments, and what you're willing to work around, right? To maintain the open space of enjoying and loving and life and what it can give for us here. So there is I think in that's where I think you're next. That's where we're going to get your training wheels need to come off right there. You're super close, by the way. I really feel like, wow, you have done so much on your own, just out of your own will to recover. Congratulations. Freaking awesome.
Well, thank you. I really attribute a lot of progress from watching your videos. Been very eye-opening.
Awesome. Well, good. I'm glad that I
don't pull any punches.
So,
yeah. All that.
So, yeah, I think where we got to go is, where are your blocks? Where are these strings attached? And how do we remove the strings attached so that you can really grasp this next kind of like release, the next release that needs to occur, right?
Right.
You could do the protocol. Is that something you want to do? I bring that up only because it's like I have a sense that might be what you're wanting to, where you want to go. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
I'm not judging that. It's just like...
Is there nothing? Yeah, I mean, that is, I guess, I would like to know your opinion on that as far as, I swore it off a couple of years ago because I kept hearing about, oh, this is so bad for metabolism and, you'll never recover. It's making you worse and all this. And I'm like, really? Is that really what's making me worse? Or is it just that I'm trying to control something in a sick and twisted way?
Well, what this takes is...
after the diet, after the HCG, doing my own, let me clarify, doing my own, diet binge, thing. And I don't think the diet is the let's call it the protocol problem. I think that it's
the reasons why you were doing it.
Yeah, because that.
So we'd have to go into, well, what's the reason you're doing it now? What's the intent? What do you want to get out of it?
There's that, and I think I know the reason that I would want to do it. I think that it would just be a huge test, and it would be like clean the closet out. The rest of your house is looking pretty good, but you've got that one closet. You're kind of going. That's going to be a big one, and I don't want to just ignore it. I want to feel the freedom of yeah.
Okay. If there is anything,
I face that demon.
Well, if you could, because what it's going to do is present to you the gratification of weight loss. Is going to do it. And so if that's what you, underneath it all, if that's the truth of what you're hoping for, it's going to manifest as strain with food. And your strain with food is going to come back.
And am I just going to use the food as a drug to numb whatever, I have to that's where the training wheels need to come off.
Do you feel like at this point you're still kind of using food dysfunctionally? You may not be binging, but are you still? Okay, so what would make that come back?
If I were to be, if I were to lose weight doing the protocol, would that trigger that?
Not the weight loss. The weight loss isn't going to trigger it. It's how you get like if you like it.
How I perceive myself.
Yeah, if you get gratification off of it, if you're excited about it, if you're hoping that it stays, like any type of bias desire that's getting like fulfilled. So you would just have to be very honest with yourself now about what is it that you're expecting. You have to do that ahead of time. What do I really want from this? Like, tell the brutal truth.
I was like, through the videos, watching it, thinking, okay, well, what would the protocol mean to me at this point, knowing what I know, where I am? Because what if I gained, what if something weird happened? What if I took the wrong, or whatever? I took the wrong thing, and actually made me gain this time, because, you had to go into it thinking, okay, this can't fail. This is the real deal. But I was like, okay, well, how would I feel about that? Would I still do it? Would I still take that chance? Just trying to think through all of it. All the possibilities.
What if you found out that the body your body's in right now is its natural state? This is the way it is, and it's going to be this way permanently. How would that feel?
Yeah, I think I'm there. I think I'm willing to clean up that closet and work on it.
It's pretty.
But you approach the protocol differently, right?
Oh yeah, well the protocol is the same.
In the past.
Protocol is the same. I look at it as a medical procedure. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do you really even need something so radical? It doesn't really heal people who don't have a weight problem. I saw that early on. There was no improvements to metabolism. There was no improvements to anything. when people didn't have a adequate weight, they couldn't even be on the protocol very long because they were hungrier and they were eating more. And so it was really about weight loss, about the kind of the vanity aspect. So that's the first question you have to ask yourself. Are you even a good candidate for it physically? So if I have someone who's 300 or 400 pounds, they're physically a great candidate. Like they're clearly, their body's working beautifully. It's healed. It's great. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But it's, in terms of a balance, it's kind of balanced off, right? You're not probably off. So what is the protocol going to do besides force you to face the ego idea of thinness is going to help something, right?
Yeah.
Once you face that,
I've approached it in the past of, okay, well, this is just going to make me lose weight, so that's great, that's cool, that's my goal. But what is your research? And I haven't read your book, so it may say it in there, which I need to read, but about my metabolism, and you hear, oh, it kills your metabolism, but then I've heard, no, it helps your metabolism. So what is it?
Well, you'd have to read the book. I mean, unless you want to talk for another couple hours. Okay. It's very dependent. What I found is that the larger someone is, the more improvements they had to their overall metabolism. But again, it doesn't really make a difference if that person is emotional about the weight loss and he then projects that emotion into dieting. When it's all over, they'll recreate the problem because they're doing the same thing over and over and over again. They just now made the protocol their diet,
And as you said that, I truly was like, not me. Like, not this time.
Yeah.
I really feel like that could be a different outcome this time.
Well, and as long as you're okay gaining all the weight back, like if you do this protocol and you regain all the weight back, not because you're binging, but just because that's your body's natural state of being, and the protocol really isn't going to improve that because you don't really have a problem at this point, right? If you're okay with that, then awesome. You're a good candidate. If you're not okay with that, you should not do it. It's not, why would you do it? You know what I mean?
Right.
You'd have to accept your body now. Accept what it is now. Because that's what it's going to take to be able to accept it regaining weight. Because that's what it really is. Not because you're enforcing something or pushing it, but that's metabolically the body's actual state of being. You got to be okay with that. So if you're not okay with it now, what makes you think that you're going to know how to be okay with it then? Right? You got to be okay. You got to know how to be okay with it unconditionally.
That could happen with any,
yeah,
any weight loss.
You got it. Yeah. So it's like you need to
what you're weight on other diets.
Exactly.
Gain it back.
See, now you're talking. Yes. So it doesn't really. Why do the protocol if you're not a good physical candidate to it? All you need to do, this is all just emotional and mental processing. You need to just process it, whether you're on a restriction or not. If you're not okay with your weight, you're going to have issues. That's why I go into, if you had to be the size plus 20 pounds, back and forth for the rest of your life, would you be okay with that? Thyroid problems forever. Would you be okay with that? Would it be relieving to know this is permanent? Would it be the best thing ever?
Would it be the best thing ever? No.
Okay.
Would it be fine? Yes.
Yeah. So you got to get yourself into a position where you just don't care. Why would you waste another second on thinking about it? I think that's where you need to focus in on it. It's like, okay, what do I expect?
How do you do the protocol different? Like, I haven't found a video where you describe that.
Yeah, you'd have to get into my Patreon account. I've got 2 years, I think over 300 YouTube videos in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can find it in
Yeah, and I'm rewriting Weight Loss. Well, not rewriting Weight Loss Apocalypse. I'm doing an edition right now that updates all this information. So even if you don't read the original Weight Loss Apocalypse, is super awesome around the science of metabolism and HCG and how it works, and very academic in that way. I talk about the hunger scale, how important that is to just understanding the body, But I didn't necessarily address all the underlying issues with body image. So that's where this new edition is going to be addressing. So, yeah, I'm almost tempted to say don't read the first one, read this next one first, and then go back to the first one.
But you still are an advocate.
Totally. Yeah, of course.
It's a good tool
for people who are not emotional about their weight. Yes, it's awesome. It's a medical procedure. It's like the way I would describe it is, imagine you need a kidney. You're going to donate your kidney to someone. This would be like a procedure that prepares for kidney transplants. It's like you need to see it like that. Like, why would you be emotional about what food you can't eat when you're doing it to donate a kidney? Does that make sense? This is a medical procedure. It's like this. Why would this have anything to do with your feelings of self-esteem? So once you have someone who's really addressed the underlying issues with survival mechanisms, self-esteem, self-worth, our pack animal need to feel lovable, all that stuff has been addressed and resolved. Now it's a medical procedure. They don't have this, I hope I lose weight, I hope I feel better about there's not all this narcissistic bias they're bringing to the table, self-serving shit. In that case,
so after all these years of seeing people do this, you still feel like that is the most effective and healthy, basically?
I would never say that. That's very
recommended.
I think it has the potential to do a lot of good. There's so much I don't know about it because there's not any.
If you were overweight, would you do it?
No, I wouldn't give a shit. I don't care about overweight's relative. But no, I've almost committed suicide over stupid shit like that. There's no point to it. I don't. It would be kind of fun to experience something like it because I've never done it. But no, not unless it was like, if someone said, I don't even know. I'm not saying it because, let's say, for example, I think what threw me is the whole the comment on being overweight. That's not an issue. You're not overweight. The body builds fat for a good reason. It would have to be something like there is an issue with your adrenals and your ovaries. This procedure could potentially improve it. So do you see how it's not about my weight? So I would do it for that, and I wouldn't care if I lost weight or regained it all. I would be very interested to see if the coordination between my pituitary, adrenal, and thyroid axis or ovary axis changes. Why is it? Why would you give a shit about your weight?
Every 3 months, getting blood work, trying to get all that.
Yeah, but not all that would make sense if you've been in fight or flight for years. Yeah, that to me, you don't really have an issue hormonally. That's a symptom of someone who's in extreme fight or flight for years, right? So get rid of the fight or flight problems.
HCG could have the potential to
maybe. I've only seen
improve that situation.
Yeah, for people who are morbidly obese.
Oh, well, I don't think I'm morbidly obese.
Yeah, or even considered overweight, right? So some of the issues have to do with
I guess I'm obese in the, on certain scales.
Right, I know. It's so true because you're never thin enough, right? But yeah, so you see how it's like, well, I don't even think in terms of weight anymore. To me, that's like saying if you were a sinner and you needed to like get forgiven for your sins, would you go do penance? Like what? No. You see how that sounds? When you said, if you're overweight, would you do this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? No, No. Why would you do that's what? It has nothing to do about your weight is just like your body gains fat. It's supposed to do that under these environments. So why are we demonizing that? It's not about that. If you look at it from a medical, like endocrine environment, that's more important. The end result with weight is irrelevant, whether you gain weight or not. That's kind of that's a different viewpoint, don't you think? Because now we're looking at it as a medical procedure, not about the outcome of body fat. Body fat, the mechanism of fat gain is there for a reason, and it's supposed to be there, and it's not a bad thing. And your body's meant to gain weight. Pregnant women gain 30% body fat for a reason. It's supposed to be that way. Should we be demonizing that? Right? So it's like your whole view of the body has to be updated. So if you could, change the framework of your viewpoint, yeah, you could probably do a 3 weeks short round, but the fact that you're calling it overweight, that's a sign right there that you're still thinking your body needs to be fixed. Right? And you got to get to a place where...
I think I use the term overweight, but it's kind of like just the extra fat that has, affects your estrogen and my thyroid situation.
Yeah, see, and that's super biased. That's not even... Yeah, fat doesn't cause that. Stress does.
No?
Yeah, no. Everybody so you got to get rid of that idea. So when I say to you, if you had to be this fat forever, permanently, you're never going to be thin. If you were to tell the truth, what's the true response you're experiencing? It's probably, oh shit, that sucks.
No, I actually don't feel that way. I feel like I would be okay. I was like, yeah, you have to be this size. No, it's not that bad. I'm able to function just fine.
Right, so that's where I would take you first. Before you even touch the protocol, you have some resolving to do right there. Because it's only made worse in your head if you think you need to lose weight, right? It's like saying, well, if it's not permanent, well, then I don't feel good about this. Well, if it is permanent, well, then I'll choose to feel good about it. Okay, I'm over time.
Yeah, that's something I need to work on.
Yep.